Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional Co-Axial Master Chronometer. This watch is available from Chronex.com for €7,900. You can purchase the watch from Chronex.com online or alternatively in person at their boutiques. All their watches are Chronex certified original by their in-house watchmakers, and all their watches are covered by the Chronex 24-month warranty. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with a piece. So the Speedmaster comes in a watch box which is protected by this large cardboard outer box. One removes the lid, pulls down the flap, and it's a large watch box, so I'm going to rotate it and show it to you because I want to show you the book which comes in the base. There's a tray in the base, one pulls out the ribbon and that pulls out the book. So as you can see, one gets this very interesting Moonwatch book with clear high definition pictures, and also details the history of the Moonwatch, so a very useful read. Now in the box we've also got a very comprehensive owner's instruction manual. It's very thick because it's translated into multiple foreign languages. Clear high definition pictures and also clear concise instructions. It details every aspect of operating this Speedmaster, including the movement used, which is the caliber 3861. So I'll show you the watch box itself. So as you can see, the Speedmaster watch box is large. It's like a suitcase style, and we have two Velcro straps which I've undone. Hinge lid, very nice presentation, and it's very well executed. And the watch sits on a padded pillow cushion in the base, very nicely upholstered with a velour fabric. Now an interesting detail is that in the base one can lift up the lid, and it actually has a travel case which one pulls out. So it's a very clever design because the padded pillow cushion that I showed you actually forms part of the travel case. It's a hard shell box that which one folds up, as you can see, and it's secured by a metal popper and strap, which I'll just show you. So very nice presentation. It's good to get this included in the base of the watch box. One could potentially use this hard shell travel case to protect the watch, and I like it. So I think it's an innovative design, and it's good the way that it folds up and also folds back out, so one can put it back into the base easily, as you can see. One also gets some microfiber polishing cloth. So very nice presentation to the watch box. This is a brand new unworn 2021 piece, so it's a full set. We even have the original Omega price tag, and I'll show you the three cards that come with the watch. We have the international warranty card with the full reference number of the piece, and also you can see the date of purchase was the 16th of November 2021. One also gets this Master Chronometer plastic card, and one also gets this pictogram plastic card. So full set piece, brand new, unworn 2021, the latest version of the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional Co-Axial Master Chronometer. We have a 42mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 13.5mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the 2-button push clasp, and as you can see, the clasp is signed with the Omega brand emblem to a high standard. Now, as this is a brand new unworn 2021 piece, it still has the protective film in place on the clasp. However, I can tell you it is finished to perfection. Beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel, and I like the 2-button pushers on the flanks of the clasp. Nice spring-loaded action, good firm resistance. Now, minor criticism to the clasp is there are only 2 micro adjustment holes, and as you can see I have moved it to position 2, which is maximum extension for the bracelet, in order to fit my 8-inch wrist correctly. I would prefer to see Omega use 5 micro adjustment holes because that would allow for better fine tuning of the bracelet length to get the better fit. Now the other thing they could do is use the Omega Seamaster style of clasp, which has a micro adjustment mechanism internally. I think the Seamaster clasp is far superior to the Speedmaster clasp, and they could introduce the ratcheting mechanism internally into the body of the clasp, and still retain the aesthetics of the Speedmaster clasp. So really, I don't think 2 micro adjustments are adequate. I would like to see 4 or 5. I think it could be further improved with the absence of a micro adjustment mechanism. So with regards to the rest of the specification of the piece, we have a domed sapphire crystal with AR coating. Now, unlike the Seamaster, which I previously reviewed, that has double AR coating. It has AR coating on the top side and the underside of the sapphire crystal. With this Speedmaster Moonwatch, it only has AR coating on the underside. But having said that, the AR coating does a good job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the domed sapphire crystal, as you can see. The Speedmaster is also available with a Hesalite crystal for purist Amiga collectors, which obviously prefer the original Hesalite crystal because it retains the aesthetic of the vintage Speedmaster. Personally, I prefer sapphire crystal because it's more scratch resistant, it's harder than Hesalite, and I think it's more practical for a daily wear piece to use sapphire crystal rather than Hesalite. The domed sapphire crystal does still retain the vintage aesthetic because it has the same profile as the Hesalite, but I think that it's just more practical. So the AR coating does work very well. Good symmetry to the dial. I like the arrangement of the 9, 6 and 3 o'clock subdials and the contrasting white baton hands and arrowhead white second hand. So the dial layout is the classic Speedmaster Moonwatch dial layout, clearly legible, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. Aluminium bezel insert in the stainless steel bezel, and it is finished to perfection. It's very aesthetically pleasing, and it's clearly legible to read the tachymeter scale with the silver metallic finish to the tachymeter Arabic numerals. So it's a very well executed tachymeter scale. With regards to the pushers, we have 2 stainless steel pushers which are sterile, and then we have a signed crown. As you can see, it's coin edge finished, mirror polished domed cap with the Amiga brand logo embossed, finished to perfection. So it's a manual wind chronograph, and therefore it doesn't have a screw down crown because one has to manually wind the piece, and the push-pull crown makes it more practical because one doesn't need to unscrew it in order to manually wind it to top up the 50-hour power reserve. In the closed position, one can manually wind the movement, which is the caliber 3861. Nice feel to manually winding it. It's got a clicking sound of the ratcheting mechanism, and I really like the sound of it. It's a real pleasure to interact with the piece and manually wind it. And it feels silky smooth. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up as one manually winds it to its maximum 50-hour power reserve. So let's test the action. Pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position. It's the time setting position, as you can see. Nice firm resistance to the caliber 3861. It feels very similar to its predecessor, the caliber 1861, and the predecessor to that, the caliber 861. It's got that same characteristic firm resistance to the gearing. No backplay whatsoever, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. I like the firm resistance. It feels like a good solid movement. One can feel the resistance, the friction of the gearing. So it's an absolute pleasure to set the time. Pushing it back in restarts the movement. Now this is a notable feature which I really like about the caliber 3861. It has hacking. One can hack the second hand dead to set the time precisely to the second. Other movements used in the Speedmasters, such as the caliber 1861 and the caliber 861, don't have hacking for the seconds, but with the caliber 3861 it does have hacking, so one can hack the movement to stop the second hand dead. So let's test the chronograph complication. Pushing the top pusher activates the chronograph complication, and we can see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial, and it sweeps very smoothly. Despite running at 3 Hz rather than 4 Hz, it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Usually I prefer watches to have a 4 Hz frequency in the case of automatics, and I like them to have a beat rate of 28,800 vibrations per hour, because it gives the second hand a smooth sweep. But in the case of manual wind chronograph movements, I find the 3 Hz to be acceptable, despite the 3 Hz not having a smooth sweep like 4 Hz. So it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and as you can see, it has that 3 Hz characteristic tick to the chronograph second hand. Pushing the top pusher stops the chronograph complication. Pressing the lower pusher will activate the flyback complication, and that will make the chronograph hand sweep back to the 12 o'clock index. So as you can see, the flyback complication works perfectly and it resets bang on 12 o'clock. So the alignment is 100% correct and it's an absolute pleasure. One thing I like about the Caliber 3861 is the accuracy of it. I love the flyback second hand. It really resets every time bang on 12 o'clock. So the crown execution is very good. Although it's a push-pull crown, it provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 meters of water resistance, which is perfectly acceptable for a chronograph piece, and the pushers also provide an effective hermetic seal to 50 meters. Personally, I prefer screw-down pushers as per the Rolex Daytona. I like the more secure hermetic seal of a screw-down pusher and screw-down crown. The Daytona, for example, has 100 meters of water resistance, which is superior, and I like the feeling of unscrewing the chronograph pushers. But having said that, 50 meters is perfectly acceptable. The chronograph pushers do have a nice firm spring-loaded action. One's got to give them a good solid push to activate the chronograph, good solid push to stop it. I like the reassuring loud audible click. It's got a nice feeling. So operating the chronograph is a nice satisfying feeling. Pressing the flyback complication, the lower pusher, also has a nice positive click. So it feels very heavy in terms of the mechanism. Nice firm spring-loaded action to the pushers. They feel solid, so one gets a good feeling of quality. Now, with regards to the clasp, as you can see, this has been updated. This is the latest 2021 version, so it's the current version. Personally, I prefer visually the aesthetics of the predecessor to this, which I've also reviewed, which was also a 2021 piece. I like the curved profile of the predecessor clasp. This is the successor. It has the vintage aesthetic of vintage Omega Speedmasters with the embossed Omega brand emblem, but I don't like the rectangular profile of it and the sharp block-like profile. I think the curved profile of the Speedmaster 2-button push clasp is better looking. But however, this is subjective. Purist collectors like this because it has the vintage aesthetic. Good frame resistance to the 2-button push triggers. And the interior is finished to perfection, as one would expect. Brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks of the solid milled stainless steel clasp, which is made from 316L grade. So, as you can see, one of my favourite aspects of this piece is the screw-down exhibition case back. This Speedmaster Moonwatch is available in several versions, Hesselite crystal on the front or sapphire crystal, and alternatively one can have a solid stainless steel case back or the exhibition case back we're looking at here. This is my personal favourite. I prefer the sapphire crystal on the front and also the exhibition case back with sapphire crystal on the back, rather than having Hesselite and having a solid stainless steel case back. So the screw down exhibition case back does a good job of displaying the movement use, which is the Caliber 3861, and as you can see it is beautifully decorated with Coats de Genève stripes finishing on the bridges to the movement, so it's an absolute delight to look at the movements. And I think it's a pleasure. Really, if one's buying a Speedmaster Moonwatch, one should choose the exhibition caseback version to look at the Caliber 3861 because it really is one of the best aspects of the piece. Mirror polishing is flawless finishing, as you can see, engraved with a specification around the circumference and glazed with sapphire crystal. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, so it is a tight fit to get it across my glove, but I can do that, and I'm pleased to report it does fit my 8-inch wrist. Now bear in mind there are only 2 micro adjustment holes as I've detailed, and I've moved it out to the largest position, which has extended the bracelet to its maximum. So the maximum size this bracelet will fit is an 8-inch wrist, but for the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7-inch wrist or even a 7.5-inch wrist, this will fit you no problem whatsoever. The bracelet has been slimmed down. Now, personally, I prefer the predecessor's bracelet. I prefer the wider profile of the bracelet and wider profile of the clasp on the previous version. But however, purist Omega collectors will prefer this because it has a more vintage aesthetic with the slimmer bracelet, and also it has the 5-link bracelet with mirror polished centre links. Now, on the Hesselite versions, they have a matte finish to the mirror polished links we were looking at here. Some collectors prefer this, some collectors prefer this 5-link bracelet with the mirror polished centre links. It's subjective, really, it comes down to personal taste. I like the aesthetics of this, but however, I prefer the predecessor's bracelet, which was heavier, the links were thicker, and it was wider in profile with a thicker clasp. I think that that was more aesthetically pleasing. But having said that, the bracelet does balance the head of the piece very well, bearing in mind it's a 42mm and it has a 20mm lug width. Now, the lug-to-lug measurement is very good on this piece. I consider 48mm to be the sweet spot. This is 47, so it's very close to perfection in terms of the sweet spot. But as it's a 42mm, my advice to you is this. This is best suited to collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you may want to consider the Speedmaster Reduced, which has a smaller case and therefore it will fit you better. And I think it's often the case that collectors make, because they think that the 42mm Speedmaster will suit them best. They see pictures online and YouTube videos, but in reality when they wear it on wrist they realise that the 42mm Speedmaster has a lot of wrist presence. Although it doesn't particularly have a lot of heft, it's 140 grams with all the links in the 5-link bracelet that you're looking at. So if you have a 7 to 8 inch wrist, this will fit you to perfection, but if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, I strongly consider you consider the reduced version, which I think will fit your wrist better. The 20mm lug width really does work very well, and it balances the 42mm head of the piece very well. 13.5mm is a pleasant surprise because it does have that domed top hat box style crystal, as you can see. Very aesthetically pleasing. One would expect it to be in excess of 14mm. 13.5 really is very practical because it is easily going to slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So very well balanced. The 140 grams means that it doesn't feel too hefty. It feels very comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. I've worn both versions of this, the Hesalite version with a solid stainless steel case back and this sapphire crystal version with the sapphire crystal exhibition case back, and I think that this has the edge in terms of comfort because the flat sapphire crystal in the exhibition case back sits perfectly smooth and flat against the wrist. With the Hesalite version with a solid stainless steel case back, the embossing of the Seamaster on the case back means that it doesn't feel as smooth and as comfortable, so this is more comfortable. Now, I've previously reviewed the other 2021, the predecessor to this, and I think that the bracelet on that looked better, but in terms of comfort it feels exactly the same. It feels very well balanced as its predecessor, but this has the enhancement of the updated movement, the caliber 3861, so that is a benefit. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. Perfect symmetry to this Speedmaster dial. I love the symmetry of it with the absence of a date complication. We have the perfect symmetry of the indices. The baton hands are loomed to a very good standard. One can clearly differentiate between the shorter hour hand and the longer minute hand. So the legibility is outstanding. I also like the fact they fully loomed the arrowhead tip to the chronograph hand. One can clearly see the chronograph hand. So if I press the top pusher, you'll see that the arrowhead on the chronograph hand begins to sweep around the dial. One can clearly see it. And I really like that functionality of it. So for example, one could time in the dark if necessary. Pressing it again stops it, and the lower pusher activates the chronograph flyback complication. The other thing I like is the 12 o'clock index on the dial is also different from the other indices on the dial, so the orientation of the dial is excellent. One can clearly orientate where 12 o'clock is. In terms of the tone, it's got a lovely characteristic green tone to the Superluminova. It looks very similar to C3 Superluminova, and it really does fit the aesthetic of the Speedmaster Moonwatch. It gives that vintage feel of tritium lume, which also glowed green. So I think they've made the correct decision by using a green tone of Superluminova like C3 rather than using the contemporary BGW9 Superluminova, which glows blue. I think that blue BGW9 wouldn't have fitted the Speedmaster Moonwatch aesthetic. Green really does suit it better. It gives it more like a vintage feel of the original tritium dialed versions. So the lume's glowing very brightly, and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. It's very good performance. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. And this is a reason alone to purchase the Speedmaster Moonwatch. So, it's powered by the caliber 3861, which has 26 joules. It's anti-magnetic to 15,000 Gauss, which is very impressive. It's a manual wind chronograph, and also it benefits from hacking. This is something that previous movements, the caliber 1861 and the caliber 861, didn't have. One couldn't hack the second hand to stop the movement dead to set the time precisely to the second. So that's a benefit of the caliber 3861 hacking. 50-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable, so that's a slight increase on the previous movement, the caliber 1861, which had a 48-hour power reserve. 50 hours is a slight improvement. Now, the most notable feature of the caliber 3861 is that it is METAS certified as a master chronometer, which is very impressive. Again, that's something that the predecessor, the caliber 1861, didn't have. It wasn't METAS certified as a master chronometer. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. So the caliber 3861 is based on the Lume caliber 1873. And the Lume 1873 is a reliable, well-proven workhorse chronograph movement. It's well-respected globally, and really the design is the foundation of the architecture of the caliber 3861. So the caliber 3861 is the successor to the 1861 and also the successor to the 861. And the benefits of the movement, the improvements, are that it has a coaxial escapement and also a silicon balance spring. So it's more accurate and it's master chronometer certified because of the coaxial escapement, and it's also more anti-magnetic to 15,000 Gauss due to the silicon balance spring. So it's a technically excellent movement. It's one of the greatest Omega calibers ever made. I really like the caliber 3861, and also it's beautifully decorated. If you look at the bridges, they have beautiful milled stripes, the Côtes de Genève finishing, or Geneva stripes as they're called. Absolutely beautiful finishing to it. So it's an absolute pleasure to look at it through the screw down exhibition case back. I absolutely love the detail of it. So reliable, accurate, master chronometer certified. Really, there are no negatives to it whatsoever. 50-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable for a daily wear piece, and I like the fact that it's certified by METAS. METAS testing is very thorough because they test the movements not just when they're 100% wound to their maximum power reserve, they also test the movement's accuracy when they're running at 30% of their power reserve, which is a more real-life scenario. So really, it's one of the greatest Omega calibers ever made. The 3861 is outstanding and beautiful to look at. The quality control, the finishing, the build's quality, the materials and the accuracy are all very good. I like the coaxial escapement, and I also like the fact that it has a silicon balance spring which is anti-magnetic. So really it's a very good quality chronograph movement. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So the price point of this piece is €7,900. Now, in order to evaluate this piece, one needs to study the finishing of the bezel, the head of the piece, the screw-down exhibition case back, and the bracelet. They are all finished to perfection. Absolutely gorgeous mirror polishing, flawless brush satin finishing to the head of the piece, the flanks, and also the bracelet links. The 5-link bracelet is very well executed, and I love the mirror polish centre links. Very aesthetically pleasing mirror polish flanks. Nice oval profile to the links. It articulates very well. Feels silky smooth against the wrist, so very comfortable to wear. Really, the only negative to the piece in terms of the build quality or the execution of it is the clasp. I think the predecessor's clasp is more aesthetically pleasing. I just think it's better looking with a curved profile to it. It's longer, and also the flanks are more reduced. It's just a better shaped clasp. The real negative to this, as I've discussed, is the 2 micro adjustment holes. It's just not enough. I would like to see a micro adjustment mechanism as per the Speedmaster, or alternatively 5 micro adjustment holes in order to enhance the clasp. Yes, it is aesthetically pleasing because it has a vintage aesthetic to it, as per the early Speedmasters, but I think the predecessor's clasp is better done. So I don't regard this to be an enhancement. I think that they should have used the predecessor's clasp. I think it was better looking, and also it just was a better shape. But the bracelet is very good. The head of the piece is outstanding, and of course, most importantly, the best thing about this watch is the movement, which is the caliber 3861, which is one of the greatest Omega calibers made. It's excellent that it is METAS Master Chronometer certified, so it's a very good quality chronograph movement. So yes, it is excellent quality, and yes, it is excellent value. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for your consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional Co-Axial Master Chronometer. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.